Hello, my name is Nikita Stark, Human Dynamics Specialist and Alchemy Facilitator. You are about to hear a piece on the father wound, which really means the imprint your dad left on your nervous system and the way you move through your life, your love, power, boundaries and safety. As you listen, just notice what lands in your body and only stay with it if you feel resourced enough to do so. Now, before I get on with that, when you find my work, you usually find it because something in you is ready for a deeper kind of honesty. I speak to the places most people avoid, the parts of us that shape our relationships, our choices, and the way we move through the world. If you want to stay connected to this kind of exploration and begin your own inner recalibration, you can subscribe here on YouTube and join my Substack. So, here we go. The father wound. Which father wound do you carry? I have never had so many DMs and emails from a single blog as I did from the mother wound piece on Substack, and recently I put that onto YouTube. So many were triggered. They cried, they felt guilt, and some felt anger towards their mum. But before I go any further, please be gentle with yourself. Only listen to this if you feel ready. If your body tightens or you notice your breath shorten, please just pause, drink some water, take a walk, or come back another day. Look, my teachings are never ever about blame, only understanding the blueprint you picked up and how it still runs your life. Just as the mother wound, it shapes your inner voice, the father wound shapes your edges. So it touches your sense of self-worth, your boundaries, your relationship with men and masculinity, your trust in authority, your approach to purpose and provision, and how safe you feel to take up space. None of this makes your dad the villain. Most fathers were carrying their own unhealed shit, and we are here to name the pattern so you can choose differently now. If anything in this lands really heavily, look, that's okay. It just means your body recognizes the pattern. So listen, go slow. You can pause, be honest about what hurts and still hold compassion. Awareness is everything. It's the doorway. So choose what changes the story. So why naming the father wound matters. When I talk about the father wound, as I said previously, there is no need to sit in a blame space. Try to view it as a byproduct rather than fault. Every single one of us has been shaped by the relationship or lack of relationship we had with our dad, whether he was present, absent, gentle, violent, distant, or your best mate. His role left a mark on how you see yourself and the world. Your relationship with your mum becomes the baseline for how you relate to yourself. So your inner voice, your self-talk, the way you hold or dismiss your own needs. But your relationship with your dad, on the other hand, becomes the blueprint for how you relate to others. If it influences how you connect in relationships, how you navigate power and boundaries, and how safe you feel to trust or receive or stand your ground. For women, the father wound often shapes how safe you feel with men, how much you believe you are worth protecting, and how you measure your value in relationships. For men, it shapes how you view yourself as a man, how you relate to power and authority, and how much permission you feel to show tenderness without losing strength. If your dad was emotionally unavailable, you might have grown up believing you weren't worth noticing. If he was critical or controlling, you may have learned that love has to be earned by performing, pleasing, or fighting back. If he was absent, you may still carry the ache of a protector who never actually came. When naming the father wound, it isn't actually necessary to reopen old pain for the sake of it. Just try seeing the blueprint that is still running the show today. So until you bring it to light, you will keep repeating the same patterns in your relationships, your parenting, your work, and in the way you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. When you name that wound, you give yourself the chance to choose differently, to see that your worth was never meant to be measured against his wounds, to remember that his failures or absence don't define who you are, but they may still live in how you move through life until you heal them. There is not one single version of the father wound. It wears many faces. Some dads were never there at all. Some were there but absent in every way that mattered. And some were too present, controlling, critical, or unpredictable. Others carried so much of their own unprocessed pain that they passed the weight of it onto their children. What matters is not necessarily the label, but how the pattern lives on inside you today. So I'm going to list some common father archetypes. As you hear them, notice which one lands in your body, which stir old feelings, and which one feels uncomfortably familiar. You may recognize your dad in more than one of them, or even see echoes of different archetypes in different seasons of your life. We don't need to make your dad the villain. We only need to shine a light on the imprint you carry, so you can begin to understand why you relate to others the way you do, and so you can start choosing something different, so you can cut the cord and heal. Okay, so we've got the absent father. As a child, the absent father may have been physically gone through separation, work, illness, or simply by choice. Or he may have been in the house but emotionally unreachable, leaving you with the same hollow feeling of absence. As a kid, you learnt to live without his presence. You might have secretly waited for him to show up or to notice you, to choose you. When he didn't, the silence became its own kind of answer. You weren't worth staying for. Now, the core wounds it forms. This archetype seeds feelings of abandonment, invisibility, and not being enough. The nervous system learns to expect loss, to brace for rejection before it happens, and to internalize absence as a reflection of your worth. As an adult, the father wound often plays out in two directions. Some find themselves repeatedly drawn to unavailable partners or people who can't commit, can't stay, or be present. Others become fiercely independent, refusing to need anyone, priding themselves on being self-sufficient, while silently aching for someone to finally show up. Friendships, workplaces, and even parenting can be coloured by a fear that if you lean too much, the support is going to vanish. Now, as I did with the mother wound, I'm going to do the split of sociopath and empath, as they are born of the same wound. So the empath response, you overcompensate. You chase love, you try harder, you bend yourself to be chosen, hoping to fill the gap he left. And the sociopath response, you harden, you close your heart, you keep people at arm's length and just before they can leave you. Okay, next archetype, we've got the distant provider. As a child, this father showed up by just providing food on the table, a roof over your head, maybe even gifts or treats, but his emotional presence was nowhere to be found. He may have believed his duty began and ended with material provision. Conversations rarely went beyond surface level. Affection felt awkward or absent, and you may have grown up feeling like you had everything you needed except for the one thing you actually longed for, his love and attention. The core wounds. This archetype imprints the belief that emotional needs are either unimportant or too much. You may have felt guilty for wanting more or shamed when you tried to express it. The wound almost whispers, your values lies in what you do or don't achieve, not in who you are. As an adult, many with this wound repeat the pattern by becoming high functioning, independent and achievement driven. You may find it easier to work hard, earn money, or tick boxes of success than to sit still and be vulnerable. Intimacy can feel unsafe or even pointless because somewhere inside you learnt that people can meet your practical needs but not your emotional ones. So relationships will feel hollow, like something vital is always missing. Now, the empath-sociopath split. Empath response: you overgive, trying to prove your worth through acts of service, always doing rather than being, and hoping someone will notice you. The sociopath response: you reduce connection to transactions, keeping everything practical and controlled, avoiding depth because it feels foreign or exposing. Next, we have got the critical father. As a kid, the critical father rarely offered praise. Instead, he pointed out mistakes, demanded higher standards, or dismissed your achievements as not good enough. You may have walked on eggshells, waiting for his disapproving look or sharp words. Even when you tried your hardest, it never seemed to satisfy him. The message was clear, love was conditional, and perfection was the price of acceptance. The core wounds. This archetype plants deep roots of shame, inadequacy, and self-doubt. You learn to equate your worth with constant striving, and any slip becomes proof that you're unworthy. The inner critic is born here, replaying his voice long after he's gone. As an adult, this wound often leads to perfectionism, people-pleasing, and a constant fear of failure. You might push yourself relentlessly, always raising the bar, unable to rest in what you've already achieved. In relationships, you may find yourself with partners who echo that really critical tone, or you might turn it inward, becoming your own harshest judge or an inner bully. Vulnerability feels dangerous because you expect rejection if you're not flawless. The split. Empath response: you bend over backwards to please, driven by an endless need for approval, and you're terrified of letting anyone down. Sociopath response: you adopt the critic yourself, lashing out, belittling others, or demanding perfection to avoid facing your own sense of inadequacy. Then we got the angry or the volatile father. And as a child, with this type of dad, the angry father was unpredictable. His temper could flare up at the smallest thing at any time, and you never knew which version of him you were going to get. One moment, he might seem calm and playful. The next, he would explode. The house may have felt really unsafe. Even if no one spoke about it, you learned to scan for danger, watching his mood before deciding how to act or whether it was even safe to speak. The core wounds. This archetype wires hypervigilance into the nervous system. Safety feels conditional. You may grow up believing love is unstable, that intimacy comes with risk, and that conflict will always lead to explosion or violence. As an adult, this wound can play out as oversensitivity to anger in others, avoiding conflict at all costs, or becoming reactive and explosive yourself. Some find themselves repeatedly in relationships with volatile partners, so they replay the chaos they grew up with because it feels familiar. Others withdrew completely, terrified of rocking the boat, even when no one's angry. Your body may still brace for this impact, expecting a huge storm. The split. Empath response: you become the peacemaker, always soothing, calming, or fixing others in an attempt to keep the peace and avoid conflict. Sociopath response: you embody the rage, using anger as your armor, becoming the explosive one, so no one else can hurt you first. Moving on to the controlling father and what this is like as a child. The controlling father dominated the house. He decided what was right, what was wrong, and often what you were allowed to feel. There was little room for your individuality. His way was the only way, and questioning it could lead to punishment or rejection. Even if he believed he was protecting you, the effect was the same. Your autonomy was stripped and your voice was silenced. The core wounds. So this archetype breeds powerlessness, resentment, and self-doubt. It teaches you that your instincts can't be trusted because someone else always knew better. You may grow up believing freedom and love can't exist together. As an adult, this wound can manifest as difficulty setting boundaries because you were never allowed to have them. You may swing between compliance and rebellion, either submitting to strong personalities or fiercely resisting any form of authority. In relationships, you might unconsciously attract controlling partners, or you may become controlling yourself, mistaking that for safety. So the split, empath response, you shrink to fit, you avoid conflict and surrender your choices to keep the peace, even when it costs you. Sociopath response, you seize control wherever you can, dominating others to avoid ever being controlled again. The passive father, what this looked like when you were a child. The passive father was present but ineffective. He avoided conflict, stepped back when you needed him to step forward, or let others dominate the household. When your mother, siblings, or life itself became overwhelming, he didn't protect or intervene. His silence could feel like abandonment in disguise. He was there, but he didn't stand up for you. And the core wounds? This archetype creates feelings of unworthiness, neglect, and lack of safety. You may have learned that your needs were inconvenient, that speaking up changed nothing, and that no one was coming to shield you when life got hard. And that plants doubt around whether men can truly be relied on. As an adult, this wound often shows up as distrust in others, ability to hold or protect you. You may find yourself drawn to passive partners who leave you carrying the weight, or you may overcompensate by taking control in every area of life. In some cases, you may actually replicate him, so struggling to take action, speak up, or stand firm when it matters. So the split, empath response, you become hyper-responsible, carrying everything and everyone because you don't believe anyone else will step in. Sociopath response, you collapse into avoidance, repeating the same thing over and over again, withdrawing from responsibility and leaving others unprotected. Right, the narcissistic father. Okay, so I need to categorize these. Not all narcissistic fathers look the same. Some are really bloody obvious. Others are hard to spot because their self-focus hides under the charm or even the victim stuff. But the impact is basically the same. The child feels unseen, unheard, and used as a reflection. So you've got the overt narcissist. So loud, domineering, competitive, takes up space with his ego, expects admiration and can be cruel or belittling when he's not in centre stage. Then you've got the covert narcissist. He may appear really sensitive or self-deprecating, but constantly pulls focus back to himself, his fragility, and it keeps you orbiting his moods. Then you've got the vulnerable narcissist. They play the victim, always suffering more than anyone else. You may have grown up feeling guilty for his pain, as though it was your job to fix him. And then you've got the grandiose narcissist, obsessed with status, appearance, and achievement. And your role was to make him look good, and your success was never celebrated for you, only as a reflection on him. Then you've got the competitive narcissist. Rather than guide you, he competed with you. If you shone, he felt threatened. Instead of pride, you received rivalry. All of these masks have the same wound, a man who cannot face his own emptiness. So he uses those around him as mirrors. As a child, you didn't know that wasn't love. You only knew it felt like you didn't exist unless you served his reflection. As a child, when you have this type of dad, the narcissistic father made everything about him. He might have demanded admiration, taken up all the space in the room, or competed with you for attention. Instead of feeling like his child, you often felt like his audience. Your achievements may have been belittled or worse, used to boost his image rather than celebrated for your own sake. Love felt conditional on how well you reflected back. Okay, the core wounds. The archetype plants the belief that your value lies in how well you serve others' egos, basically. It teaches you to perform, to please, or to hide your light so as not to provoke envy. Deep down, you may carry confusion about your worth, wondering if you exist for yourself or just as an extension of someone else. As an adult, this wound often shows up as difficulty trusting your own voice, so you may struggle with boundaries, especially around dominant or self-centered people. You might find yourself attracting narcissistic partners or bosses or friends, replaying the dynamic of being unseen, or in defense, you may swing the other way, becoming self-focused to avoid ever feeling small again. So then that brings us to the split, the empath response. You become the mirror, shape-shifting to keep others happy, afraid of being rejected if you shine too brightly. Sociopath response, you claim the spotlight, demanding validation and attention so you never feel the insignificance you once did. Now let's go on to the role reversal father. As a child, the role reversal father blurred the boundaries between parent and child. So instead of protecting and guiding you, he leaned on you for emotional support. You may have been treated like his confidant, his therapist, or even his substitute partner. His struggles, worries, or unmet needs were placed on your small shoulders, leaving you responsible for holding up an adult world you were never meant to bloody carry. So the core wounds. This archetype creates confusion around boundaries and responsibility and roles in relationships. It seeds guilt for wanting your own needs met and often wires you to prioritize others at your own expense. It can also leave you with a deep fear of being a burden because you grew up being the one who carried burdens that weren't yours. As an adult, this wound often manifests as an over-functioning person in relationships. So you may become the caretaker, the counsellor, or emotional crutch for others, attracting partners who lean on you but rarely support you back. At work or in friendships, you may find yourself in the role of fixer or rescuer, even when it drains you. Your intimacy may feel heavy because love was tangled with responsibility from the start. The split. Empath response. You become the perpetual caregiver, always giving more than you receive, struggling to trust you're allowed to just be held. And sociopath response. You reject responsibility altogether, swinging the other way by refusing to support or nurture to avoid ever being used again. The inconsistent father. As a child, the inconsistent father kept you guessing. At times, he could be really warm and playful and present, but just as quickly, he could turn cold, distant, or unavailable. You never knew which version of him you would get. His unpredictability may have left you constantly striving for the good version while bracing for the disappointment of the other. The core wounds. This archetype wires instability into your nervous system. It teaches you that love is unreliable, that security can vanish in an instant without warning, and that affection must be chased. The body learns to live on survival, basically, waiting for the next withdrawal. As an adult, this wound often shows up as anxiety in relationships. You may feel addicted to the highs and lows of connection, and you mistake inconsistency for passion. So you might be drawn to partners who are hot and cold because it mirrors what love felt like in a childhood or what you thought love was. Or you may struggle with consistency yourself, so fearing intimacy one moment and craving it the next. Trust becomes difficult, and it's not because you don't want it. It's because your nervous system has been trained to expect disappointment. So, of course, that follows. The split. Empath. You chase, cling, and overextend, trying to secure the connection whenever it wobbles. Sociopath response. You become the unpredictable one, pushing and pulling, retreating when others get close, replaying the very inconsistency you once endured. And on to the traumatized father. As a kid, the traumatized father carries wounds of his own that were never healed. I shouldn't say as a kid. I don't mean him as a kid. You as a kid. Perhaps he battled addiction, mental health struggles, war memories, or a childhood just as painful as yours. His pain leaked into the house, shaping the atmosphere around him. At times, you may have felt compassion for his suffering, but you also felt the weight of it on your own nervous system. So you grew up not only managing your life as a child, but also the shadow of everything your dad couldn't face. And the core wounds? The archetype breeds confusion, grief, and emotional burden. You learn to absorb pain that wasn't yours, to normalize this dysfunction, and to adapt to chaos as if it were your home. At its deepest, it can create loyalty conflicts. So the sense that you must protect or excuse him even when he failed to protect you. As an adult, this wound often manifests as taking responsibility for other people's healing. You may find yourself attracted to broken partners, convinced you can fix them, or you may carry guilt for prioritizing yourself, because deep down, you still believe it's your job to carry the suffering of others. And sometimes it shows up as chaos in your own life, repeating the same patterns he never resolved over and over and over again. The split. Empath response, you become the rescuer, drawn to heal or save, even at the cost of yourself. Sociopath response, you numb out, detach, or repeat cycles of addiction or avoidance, unable to face what feels unbearable. I should say, for all of these, the splits that I keep talking about, empath and sociopath, we're not talking black and white here. It is a spectrum. And some people really fall into the empath category and others fall into the sociopath on the other end of the scale. Sometimes you can feel both, and it's just a nervous system response. So how do you heal the father wound? It doesn't require you to rewrite history or waiting for your dad to become someone different. So it's more about turning inwards and facing the imprint he left. Maybe the silence or the criticism, the absence, the control, or just the pain. It means noticing where his voice still speaks through your inner dialogue, and where his patterns echo in your relationships, and where his absence still shapes your choices. For women, it often means learning to trust that love can be safe, consistent, and protective without being controlling. For men, it often means learning to redefine strength, but don't look at this as hardness or dominance. Instead, it's presence and responsibility and the courage to feel. For both, it's about, realizing that your worth has never been tied to his wounds. Healing begins with awareness. Notice the pattern, name the wound. From there, it requires reparenting the part of you that still waits for him to show up differently. So this means giving yourself the stability, recognition, and protection you longed for. It also means letting go of the idea that healing will come from him or outside of you, and instead choosing to become the safe presence you always needed, so you don't outsource your own peace. And look, here's what many people need to hear. You will not heal by waiting for your parents to finally admit they're wrong, or your partners. And this is for two reasons. First, unless they are on the healing path themselves, they are very unlikely to even entertain their mistakes, because facing that truth would be way too painful. Second, even if they did apologize, it won't heal you. It might feel validating for a moment, but only you can heal you. Only you can tend to the part that was left unseen. Again, not about blaming. Most of these men, these fathers, carried wounds they never had the tools to heal. But cycles end when someone sees them. And hopefully that someone is you. Healing the father wound is never instant. It's a process of unraveling the blueprint layer by layer and replacing it with trust, self-respect, and boundaries that honor your truth. Each time you pause and you catch yourself and you notice and you decide to choose differently, you break another link in the trauma chain. If this has stirred something in you, you're not alone. These wounds run really deep because they were formed when you were young and powerless. They do not heal by thinking harder or reading more or shaming yourself for not being further along than you think you should be. They heal by being felt and seen and repatterned in the body slowly and safely with support. If you want to explore this inner work further with me, you can look at the links below in the comments section. Everything from one-to-ones to just a 20 quid alchemy course, all the way to the Unity Project mega course, which is a 90-hour course to become a healing facilitator. If you'd rather explore this work in community, you can also join Awaken Self Healers for just £11.11 a month, and that is the paid tier of my Substack. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this has helped. Have a wonderful day, and remember who you are.